So
Okay. I mean,
I'll give an update on what?
go ahead. Go ahead. We're live.
Or we're live.
Hmm.
Is this thing on? Is the red light?
Yes. So we were talking about the overall length of the carrier.
Since we last saw the carrier, I've done a little bit to it. I've mirrored out the engine nacelle layout, the engine cluster layout that we were working on last time, and I started kind of trying to round things out, make it not boxy, and kind of see how it was going to look on the carrier. I had an idea for a little more tankage without increasing the number of welders, so I laid that out real quick. And otherwise, I just I tweaked the frigate bay location one block forward, I think, and otherwise just kind of tried to lay out just simple sketch lines, just boxes, lines of cubes to try and see where things were going. You don't want to spend a lot of time building up like full whole of it. You kind of just want to put enough in there so you can see how it might be, and then if it's wrong, you didn't waste a lot of time building it, and you won't have to waste a lot of time tearing it down so you can try something else. So it's just a couple extra rows of boxes here and there. I measured out the length of the deck that we came out with to see how many fighter pads we could there. So each of those little measuring sticks is 6 cubes, which is our standard 5x5 pad plus a spacer in each pad. It won't be exact because we'll want to move it around a little bit, but it gives us an idea of what we can fit on. And it's probably more fighter pads than we really want or need. I think the Rhea had 10, the Appalachia had 16, and this is going to have it could have up to 16, but we want to use some of that space for the reloading welder array for the fighters. So it won't have that much, but even still, it's probably too much. You might be happier with just 8 pads.
Especially considering the amount of people that play at a time in a faction.
Yeah.
That you could have like a maximum number of, yeah, let's say 20 players, being a little bit optimistic. But of those, let's
That's
say,
very optimistic. I mean, if you're talking factions, maybe you've got like 2 factions on a server at minimum, and so you might have like 4 to 8 players on your team.
which is way less
It's
than
very optimistic.
yeah, I mean it's still way less than the fighter pads that we have here. So
Yeah. So it's more than we're going to be able to use in survival. I think even figuring use half of them for, like small grid miners or welders or something, half of them for fighters. It's more than we need. So
yeah, exactly.
we can do something else with that deck space. And
We're talking about
after we kind of laid out just some basic things, where are we going to put the retro thrusters? Well, about the only place to put them is kind of on the shoulders of the main hull, I think. Not a lot of other options for us at the moment.
and we're talking about that it leaves this straight angle here, this 90-degree angle here that we definitely don't want. So we're talking about ways
I mean,
of
we can soften that a little bit, but with the short 10 block length that we've laid out prow, we don't have a lot of room for smoothing that together and making something nice and aesthetic. So we want to come up with some additional length to put there, but we don't want to make this grow way too big like the Appalachia did. We want to keep it usable. So we have to, if we want to add more length at this point, we have to come up with it from somewhere else.
exactly. We don't want the whole thing protruding way too much forward from the frigate bay.
And that kind of gives us into our next project here. We did dedicate the whole main body to the frigate, but we don't have to. We can start moving the frigate bay back into engineering. We can't move it forward because we want to have the prow come and narrow. And if we have the frigate bay up there, we may not be able to do that. But we can kind of move the frigate bay backwards relatively and take up some space around engineering. That's going to mean that our tankage is going to have to move. May move further back and become one with engineering. We may find something else to do with it. For step one, we're going to have to get rid of this. So this is the advantage to kind of working with just simple lines for now. And it's going to be very easy to cut, reposition this. So how much do you think we should remove? Maybe at least 5 blocks.
But... Yeah, I was thinking like at least one line of tanks. I mean, being optimistic, I would like to say that we can fully integrate them and we can remove 10 blocks, but let's start with 5. And like you mentioned, we can still, since we're just using these single lines to show volume, it's not like we have to cut an entire section.
So let's just cut 6 because that's instead of tanks.
I think the overall shape immediately, before it was a bit too long, and now it looks proportionate relative to the tower, to the island.
And you can just go ahead and throw another 6 blocks on the front. Do a double check on our measurements real quick. Yeah, we're still about 80 blocks long. It's 84, including the end and the thrusters. So one of the ideas for what we can do with the tanks is we can use some of that extra deck space that we discovered we had and kind of cut a bit off the back, maybe move the island forward a little bit and kind of wrap the tanks around that section.
It would be kind of like a hunch. Like a hump, sorry.
No, I'm thinking a little more like fuel tanks on a tractor trailer.
I see.
That, or we can move them back, put them with the thrusters. Speaking of the thrusters, I wasn't too happy with how they were looking. I think Marcelo is kind of fine with it, but I think we can do better.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of like how they are, but you brought up some really key points, and one of them, and perhaps the functioning aspect of it, is the fact that the one from the Appalachia, it's more protected.
Yeah, and one of the things we wanted to carry over from the Appalachia was the ability to protect the ion thrusters.
Yes.
And when we're looking at this design, here in the center with mirroring the vertical maneuvering ions, it's not quite deep enough top to bottom to get the armor over or these thrusters. So by using a modified version of half of the Appalachia's cluster, could manage to fit those vertical ions in there along with the horizontals. Keep them all nicely protected. So what do you want to try to do first? Do you want to modify the engine cluster
Yeah.
or do the tanks?
I mean, let's do the engine cluster because it's we already have the template, so I guess we can,
Okay.
you know.
So let's we can quickly make a copy of this design in case we decide we actually don't like what we're doing.
Exactly.
Just make a copy, toss it down somewhere, and proceed to ignore it.
Something that you can never underestimate when playing Space Engineers is having an actual physical copy of the thing you're working on there. It's in a way easier than having a bunch of blueprints. I know people who are more organized could manage a lot of blueprints. For example, I don't know, Whip. He has like I don't know how many millions of blueprints. I personally prefer that technique that Seth just demonstrated, pasting in a copy there, and then we have like 2 or 3 more like and that you know we mess around and crash and cut and do things to them.
All right, so let's grab a thruster. Turn off T because that is the most useless feature, quote unquote, in Space Engineers.
Yeah, I know that too.
Okay, so this was the problem before was we did not have enough space to stack these thrusters like this design, but in the new one we will. Okay, so centered off this, let's make sure we're measuring correctly. That's 79. I'm gonna try to keep it to 80. It's no max length. So I'll actually have to move these forward. Toss a engine thruster down so we know just how deep we need to make this, and it'll need a wall behind it. Then if we want, we can just buttons. Too many buttons. Throw those maneuvering thrusters in. But that's not where that thruster is going to be, so let's delete that. We just need it for measurement purposes. So we wanted to actually use the same cluster that you had on the Tethys that we were kind of using in the center there on the
Catharsis.
I keep too many T names. You
Yeah.
gotta work on that, buddy.
Yeah, you're right. We need to change consonants.
I think it was like this.
And then
If I really was in trouble, I could check on the copy that we threw down.
no, that's it. That's kind
So
of like
that's
the
the advantage of having the copy because you can just go look at it instead of being like, "What was I doing again?"
exactly pressing
You
F10,
know.
looking for a blueprint, which blueprint number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then rotating it. Oh, that's how it looks. Just yeah, you know, quality of life.
All right. So looking at this, it's actually an even numbered array because it was two even numbered arrays with a spacer block between them. But we don't want to do that. We want it odd numbered to work with the Tarsus's array. So here in the center, between the hydrogen thrusters, we're going to insert a space. That'll get us the depth we need for the vertical thrusters and make it all line up nicely. So let's grab
This is
armor block.
perhaps one of the most challenging parts of this game, and when it comes to especially the ion thrusters, because they're everything tends to be odd number in Space Engineers, and these are even on height or width depending on how you rotate them. And that's why in many designs that we see, the thrusters end up looking like an afterthought.
I still screwed up, and we're going to be 81 blocks long because I can't measure. It's fine. We could still adjust it later by just doing another cut and paste, but the exact number doesn't matter. I'm going with about 80 as a rule of thumb.
Mm-hmm.
But just to make sure we don't get this thing growing out of control.
Yeah, I would say like things like block density could be maybe more important rather than block length. Okay, I see.
While you're building, don't be afraid to just kind of throw down blocks you intend to delete later, just because it'll help with how you place things based on where their default block location is, and making sure it's just easier to place. You don't have to be like me. I tend to build with symmetry off, much to the frustration of my friends. Mostly because I actually like to kind of try something out on one side of the ship, see how it looks, and if I like it, mirror it on the other side. Or if I have two competing ideas, I'll build half the ship one way, hit the other half another way, and see which I like better, and just keep taking the best idea from each side, copying it over to the other. And
That's a technique that is surprisingly useful. I have to confess that I was full symmetry before, and then I recently started doing that because of Seb's influence, and I actually saw the benefit of it when it comes to those tiny bits in which you don't know or you're not sure which one you like better.
oh no, dead air! Quick, say something.
I was just looking at the overall shape of the engine cluster.
All right, so we're going to have less overall thrust. We've obviously gone down from 10 hydrogen thrusters down to 8. Same number of ions. Little trade-off, but the last array was probably a little bit too big for the ship.
Mm-hmm.
It was the widest part, which could be good, could be bad, but I think this will still be fine. It'll definitely be a little less intense for the fuel usage.
Exactly, and it doesn't have to be a speed demon.
Right.
I think we could go with the concept of having this section, like the having a manufacturing section, which has the refineries, assemblers, and all that. Maybe then having
Because
a
we'd like to get 4 refineries, 4 assemblers, about that level of production in this thing.
mm-hmm.
Laria only had 2. The Appalachia didn't have any yet, but it was kind of planned out for a lot. And one of my previous characters, the Piedmont, only had 1 refinery, and that was nowhere near enough for a faction.
Definitely.
So we think 4 will be a happy number.
Mm-hmm. 4 being backed by some arc furnaces.
Yeah. So you think they should be like right here forward of the engines?
I was thinking of making that 4 of the engines and maybe even separating them and having the engines slash tanks be zero atmosphere environment.
Well, we definitely have enough room for a wall here, and then refineries and then another wall to separate it from the frigate bay.
Hmm.
Assuming we're doing the refineries along the way, we definitely have enough room if we put them vertically, I think.
Let's see. 4 vertically, you think they fit? Oh yeah, they do. Yeah. I don't know. I have this. I guess it's something that is a little bit obsessive compulsive. Having the letters on the blocks read.
Visible.
Yes.
Visible and oriented correctly.
Yeah.
It depends on, are we going to use them for exterior greebling?
Hmm.
Or do we want them in a internal pressurized thing?
That's a good question. I would say maybe the assemblers. That would be nice to have them in pressurized. The refineries, they could be part of the gribble. They do make a nice gribble.
Yeah, plus if an assembler bursts, it's not too bad, but if a refinery
Yeah.
gets broken and it's inside your ship, the ore spawns will generally be pretty catastrophic.
Yeah.
Whereas the ingot and
And the
component
parts.
spawns, they'll stack and stacks don't
Hmm.
get physically bigger, whereas the ore does.
Yeah, exactly. So maybe lower deck for assemblers, then refineries partially popping out from the back.
That actually kind of makes a little bit of sense, because if we have the assemblers here, right here,
Hmm.
then it kind of feeds directly into the idea that it's feeding
Yeah.
directly into the ship bay.
Yeah.
So
And I think one side of the refinery can actually.
I feel like we may not have quite enough space here to end the frigate bay and transition nicely into the rest of the ship. Feel because I think, I don't know, we may need to move the laser shipyard itself one further back. I measured this. I did, and I don't.
Well,
That's
maybe
what
we
these
can.
strut towers are. Is a position. Yeah, I think. Okay, I think I put it so that the shipyard would have to have its corners on the outside of the orange box, like right here and right here. So it has room. It's just not a lot of, pretty cramped.
You want to give it one more
We can.
block?
I would be more comfortable with one more block. Let's
Yeah.
just do a quick cut. A little more spacious. You want to clean that little L up?
Yes. Tetris piece. Now the whole
The
thing
ship
is
is
moving.
drifting.
Yeah. Let's see if. Do we
I'm
have a
gonna
gyro? And a
I'm
reactor.
just gonna add a thruster stick here,
Oh, okay.
so you can. There's different ways you can keep your builds from moving around. The way I have always done it is just it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
And that's a thing that can be blueprinted and you just paste it in.
You can also just cut and paste it, and you be able to won't be pasted unless you were moving. In which case, why were you moving? You just defeated the entire point. Okay, so that's about the size of things for the engine cluster. It's actually 3 blocks deep on the end, spaced off. Spaced off the thrusters. That gives you an idea of how wide it is. You could squeeze a little more thrust in that area if we.
And we have some lateral ions. I think the key is to achieve that balanced look in which it is a cluster, but
we can leave it for now. It's not something we have to touch at the moment. Let's go back to puzzling out this area. We can help that along by just pulling these forward. This was, you can see part of it here is it now matches up with the exact hole width. Just as Keikaku. Now, obviously, you don't want it to be that exact width the entire way along the hole, because then it'll just look too flat. But if you look at the thruster array that we're being, it does kind of bulge out and come back in, and you can work a little bit more detail in there. But getting this closer matchup will make sure that it all comes together at the end.
exactly.
Now, hydrogen dusters. I think I want to carry on this shroud thing here. We probably don't need to make the tan bit quite as long. But actually, I think it's maybe longer than the entire space we have. So that's 12. So if we go 12 forward, it comes almost right up to the end. So if we were to want to have this kind of slightly rusty gray area for the rest of engineering, we need to cut it back. So like 2 deep for the cowling, then maybe 5 for the in-slope and out-slope footed.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives us this much space in which we could put refineries or tanks. That's about 7 long.
I would say tanks. And where do you want to put the lateral ions?
Well, they can. Yeah, that's a good point, because we need to look at where the vertical ions are, because I'd like to keep them consistent all the way around.
Mm-hmm.
So if we look here, we could end it there and end it here. So we'd actually just need to make it 1 block longer. And then if we come off the back side of it with some armor blocks, do a little cut here. We can pop in our ions.
Nice.
It actually needs to be one block further. I've spaced it out. That's pretty easy fix. Okay, I think that still leaves us with 6 blocks where we could put tanks.
Yeah, I like that idea. What do you say if we try to come up with a layout for those tanks?
Oh, no, I think it's only 5. Unless we cut into the frigate bay area. We could still extend it by 1 block again.
Mm-hmm.
Don't want to do that too many times though, but that'll let us get in 2 tanks, which is going to be sufficient, I think. Just a couple quick cuts, and again we can position. Yep. Let's find the corners of this real quick so we can see about how big around the thruster is going to be. So we'll just build the front ring of this. It's going to be 7 blocks tall. And it's a slope of 3, so 1, 2, 3.
Would you like to leave the tanks a bit exposed or fully covered?
Well, right now I'm wondering what happened to my math skills because I feel like I can't count. Yeah, counting's not my strong suit. Hardest ton of mathematician.
Let's just do it visually. Let's see. For example, if I just come on, plop a tank there, and because that one could be there, but maybe not the best spot for it.
There we go.
Nice.
So the ideal arrangement is something. Something like this. This is maximum weldable tankage.
So this way that single welder can service all these 8 tanks.
Right.
Now would you like to put 4 of those? Or 2?
Well, my general rule of thumb is for every large hydrogen thruster, you need 1 tank. For every 4 smalls, you need a tank. Or no, is it 4 smalls or 8 smalls? Yeah, somewhere in there. 4 smalls is 4,000 a second, 8 smalls is 8,000 a second, and the large is 6,000 a second-ish. So, anywhere in there is fine. And that'll give you enough hydrogen fuel for whatever you're doing. Except for really long fights.
Yeah, which is not recommendable in any case.
You'll probably run out of ammo or ship.
Before you run out of hydrogen. So what do you say if we conclude this episode, well, by trying to fit these tanks in?
Yeah, I'm just I got a copy and I'm just waving it around at it and seeing where it'll fit.
Let me do that exercise too.
I think I still might have messed up. Made it not long enough. No, I did. It's just the B setting being.
It wants to automatically snap into the whatever grid.
I think it may fit most nicely the space running down the center line where the
I agree, but a little bit to the top side or downside?
I think it can actually just be. I'll just slap things in real quick. It may be fine just like this. Like an into depth perception.
Just suffer rubber band. Okay.
And we can mount that the wraparound kind of standoff armor. Make
True.
the mount for it between the tanks here, where we put the welder behind it.
That's a good idea.
But that may not be quite enough tankage overall. Talking about the general numbers we want, 8 tanks, maybe barely enough. Maybe we can get away with it because it's a carrier, but at the same time, as a carrier, we probably want it to be able to refuel our combat ships very quickly. So having extra deep tankage, not for the purpose of moving the carrier itself, but for quick refueling of other ships, we're probably not want to go with our rule of thumb minimum there.
I think something that we could do is like decentralize them and have 8 and 8, like 16
Yeah, 8 and 8,
tanks for the
8 and 8 here, just at the sides. It's a good start. And if we find places later, we can start squeezing more tanks in elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. That could be multi-purpose or dedicated to refueling instead. But yeah, I mean I like also the proportions, how it looks. It doesn't look like a hydrogen tanker. It looks like it's part of its fuel.
So we said we wanted the assemblers kind of down here in this area. So let's throw down just a couple assemblers so we can remind ourselves of that fact. So like that, we should have.
Fully
We can arrange it so
upgraded.
the door is actually up with the words up, and there'd be space to kind of walk between them. And also space all around so they can be fully upgraded, and space for the conveyor behind them, and a wall to keep it airtight against the tanks.
Exactly. Well, I think we have done enough and good progress and shown a little bit of the tricks of the trade.
And the other trick, kids, is turn off autosave. It's the devil.
Yeah.
But the other part of that is when you got something you're happy with, hit save.
Yeah, keeping it in mind. Autosave combined with accidentally de-seating a gyroscope, that's just instant rage quit. And speaking of quits, so I think we have reached the end of this section. We want to show you how to build a resistant, protected, efficient, and good-looking engine section. Engine cluster included, and fuel.
I will off camera. I'll get that all finished up nicely for you guys. You can see how it looks once we've fully copied that design over. We'll do that off camera.
Yeah, so you don't get to see, all the place block, remove block, place block, remove block. So we'll
paint.
yeah. Okay, so on that note, stay tuned for more of this new carrier design that we are building.